Yeah, sorry. So the session's being recorded, so anything you say or do will be forever recorded with your name attached to it. So please conduct yourself in a professional and respectful manner. All right. And I've also allowed you audio, so you can actually ask a question instead of type. Okay. So it's a small enough group; it's been manageable. Whoops. Okay. So what I do is I make a copy of the viewport here, and I don't change the scale. So now everything is the same size, and I expand this window until I can see the viewport. Right. So the legend is here. So actually, I do have to change the style. So I'm going to unlock it. UCS plan, make sure it's horizontal to the view, and then I zoom in here and I change the scale to 500. So now they have the same scale, and then I just resize the viewport so that it just shows the item. So this is one way of making sure everything is the same size. Okay, and I've criticized a lot of students about that. Right, so the scale, the viewport scales have to be the same. Right, because if you go in, if you zoom out or you zoom in, then the size is different. So make sure the size is the same. And when it comes to the surface legend, once you have your surface, I'll get rid of this. Once you have your surface, you click on the surface. It's just a label. So when you click on your final surface, you go to add legend. You use the one called elevations and then leave it as dynamic. So enter and then place it wherever you want. And I typically put it under here. And then you can see that in the viewport. So if I go back to the grading plan or the earthworks drawing, right, then in the viewport, you can see it, right? The style for that, I like to clean it up. There's too much color there. So what I do for this is I go to the edit label style. I turn off all of the fills. So those are the color backgrounds, right? So now there's no more color background, and I make everything white. And then it's just nice and clean. The only color items are the little examples of the color, right? So when you go into your earthworks file and you plot with your preview, you'll see the only thing in color is the surface and the colors for the ranges on the surface. Okay, this is fine in color, right? But everything else is kind of secondary, black and white in the background. Okay. If you make a copy of the grading, will it not add the point group? If you make a copy of the grading, will it not add to the point group? I'm not sure what you mean. Grading. What do you mean when you say grading? If you make a copy of the grading, what's a grading? Is that a surface? Is it a point group? The lot grading elevation. If you make a copy of a point in plan, then it'll have the same description. So it'll go into the point group. Is that what you're talking about? Yeah, so if you want to make a copy of a point, oh, you're worried about the legend, right? The point in the legend. So what I do is I make a copy. This is my trick. I make a copy of the point, right? So I make a copy of the point. I bring it over. I say, okay. Now it might go into the point group. You're right. So what I do is once I update my point group, right, it might actually, upset the surface. So if I update, rebuild, and if I rebuild this because it's pasted here, and if I rebuild my calculation, then you end up with this spike. Rebuild, right? So you're worried about this spike here, right? It's going to go all the way to here. So then what I do is once I make a copy of this, I explode it. So now it's not a point anymore. Then you update your point group. It's out of the group. It's off the surface. It's not in the pre-grade. It's off of your calculation. Yeah, so this is not a point anymore, right? But if you make a copy of it and explode it, it's not a point. It turns into a block. You'll see it's got a funny name, U something. It turns into a block, but then at least it looks the same as what you have in the plan view. So this is Jackson. So then if you explode it again, it's just a couple of lines with a piece of text. Okay. This is just a polyline. This is just a piece of text, and so on. Yeah. Now, if you didn't explode it, but you put a boundary on your surface, then certainly it wouldn't be on the surface either. Right? But I like to keep it clean. I actually explode it. I don't want this to be in the point group for whatever reason. Okay, any other questions? I'm trying after following instructions, the statistics of the cut fill surface. It could very well be, Brian. You know, if you look at this design, you can see it's almost all fill. The proposed is all above the existing. In your case, your existing might all be up here, right? Is that true? Is that what your profile looks like? Your existing is above your design? And if that's true, your site could very well be all in cut for sure. Oh, sorry, if your existing ground is down here. So if your existing ground's all below and your proposed is always above, it could all be cut for sure. So it depends which site and which topo you're working with. But it could be 100% for sure. Okay, I would always imagine there'd be a little bit of cut and a little bit of fill, or a little bit of one and maybe more of the other, but to be all 100% cut, it's not out of the realm of possibilities for sure, especially when you apply pre-grade and stripping. Any other questions? Oh, so how to build the FG surface. Okay, so the FG surface, right? I'll just create another copy of it. So you create the surface, you give it a name, FG. I'm just going to call this number 2 because I've already got FG in here. Say okay, and then the FG surface is made up of just the point group called FG. Okay, so there's my FG surface. Let me turn off the cut fill. Oops. Turn this to no display. Okay, so there's my FG surface, and then once I have that, I can apply a boundary, which is this thing here, right, this blue line. I can apply this as the boundary, and the reason I don't do that is because the boundary has a curve in it here. So I don't want that curve to cause problems, so all I do now is I look at the triangles that are outside the boundary, and I go to the edits, right-click, delete line, and I delete all the lines that don't represent the edge of this subdivision. So there's one there, there's a whole bunch here, right? All of these lines, and I got a nice clean corner cut here. This shouldn't be here. That's clean. There's probably another one here that shouldn't be there, right? You want it to hug the edge of the site, and then these 3 lines up here. And that's the edge of the subdivision. Right, so now the boundary of this matches the boundary of the subdivision. And the curve here is approximated, right? It's a bunch of straight lines, but it looks like a curve. Okay. Any other questions?
Hi.
Go ahead.
It's Claire.
Yeah.
I sent you an email, then later I check it. I think my FG surface have some problem because it's when it's related to the load. Maybe before I did something like the delete the boundary or something, it's not connected to the. You just show is how to cut it. If it's like not connected to the edge, how can I extend into the edge? Yeah, these parts. You're right.
You want to add the label? Do you want to add the lines?
Yeah. How can I add the lines?
Yeah. Okay. So let me see if I can demonstrate the problem. Okay. I'm going to isolate the surface, right? So you can isolate the object just like a layer. So I'm just looking at the object now. So if you deleted a line like this, is that the problem you're describing?
Yeah.
Okay. So to put the line back, you right-click and you say Add Line, and then you click from endpoint to endpoint.
Okay.
And then it might add more than you want, right? It added 2 more. So then I delete those 2 lines. And now I've got that back. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so there's a couple of commands there. Usually it's just the delete line, but if you overdo it with the delete line, then you have to add back.
Okay.
Warren, you were asking about swapping. Does that answer your question, Claire?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. So swapping lines is the same place, edits, swap edge. Okay, and this will give you, if you look at 2 triangles with a common edge, it's a 4-sided figure, and the swap edge will give you the other diagonal solution. So let me show you here. So if you look at this triangle and this triangle, they have this common edge. So if I use the swap edge command, if I click on this, it'll give me the four-sided figure opposite diagonal, right? So it jumps like this. That's how you swap an edge. So if you look at any edge, right, two triangles with a common face, if I click on it, it will switch it back and forth. Okay, that's how you use the swap edge command. And sometimes you need to do that to connect the top of slope to the top of slope to the top of slope, so that your top and bottom of slope are connected. If you're not going to use a break line to make that happen. Okay, so that's the swap edge command. The swap edge command is limited because sometimes the geometry won't let you do it. Let me see if I can find an example of that. Yeah, so if you look at these two triangles, the skinny triangle and this skinny triangle, they have this common edge. It won't let me swap this because the solution is not inside the four-sided figure, right? Like this is inside, right? The four-sided figure. But if you look at this point, these 2 points, and this point, this, if I flip it, is not inside the area bound by the two triangles. So this one won't allow me to swap. It's only when the solution exists internally. Okay. Do I need to make the red colored contours? You did to see what I, no, you don't need to. No, that's just a temporary surface that I create to view what the surface looks like so I can check it. That's not part of the assignment, right? You're talking about this, if I change the style. I have this one called, well, in here it's called 0.1. I created one called check where it's got red or red type contours. Yeah, that's just for visually checking. Can you answer my question about assignment 6? Carl, what did you ask? For assignment 6, under the surface properties, the cut film analysis, do we have the base elevation, -1 as a picture, or -2 as an instruction? It depends on which site you're doing, right? So when you go to do your analysis, let me show you. It usually does, it takes care of that by itself. So let me get rid of this, no display. So if we look at the cut fill surface, make sure it's building everything. Okay, so if you look at the cut fill surface in the map, so here's the result. But if you go into here and look at the surface properties under analysis, all you need to do, you can reset it with this button. So this is the default. So what you do is you change this to range interval. You change this, I think it was 0.5 or 1. I forgot what number I asked you to do. And once you know what the interval is, once you know what the interval is, it actually calculates the base. So if you go to interval and you go to 1 or 0.5, as soon as you click that, it does what it's going to do, and it'll automatically figure this out. And basically, this is the lowest elevation in the range. So it takes care of it itself. Yeah, because your lowest number is probably -1 instead of -2. So this does what it's going to do. Don't even worry about it. So the scale of the size of the legend, is directly connected to the scale of the drawing. So if I change this to 1,000, it's going to change the size. So it has to match the paper space scale. So I'm going to make it 500, and that's the size. So Sumitra, check your scale. Make sure it's 1 to 500. Yeah, so Carl, the -1, -2, just ignore it. It's going to be what it needs to be based on your particular surface. Okay, any other questions? Yeah, you have till lunchtime. Remember, the deadline is noon, not midnight. I want it at lunchtime on Friday so I can mark them in the afternoon. Yeah, just do what it said, right? Just go in here, go to the style, go to the surface property, go to analysis, change this to elevations, or sorry, change this, yeah, make sure this says elevations, make this interval, type in whatever interval you're supposed to use. I can't remember if it was 0.5 or 1, click arrow, and just don't even look at this, and just say, okay. If I make this 1, it might not change, yeah, because it knows what this number is. If I make it 5, Yeah, see, it looks at the minimum and maximum. It just takes this as the minimum. Okay. So just do what it says, and whatever happens here happens. I didn't ask you to change that number, right? It's not a default, it's a result of your particular range. So everybody's might be different. So when I submit my PDF, what I do is I export it as a PDF instead of plotting. Yeah, it should be fine. I usually just plot. I type in plot, and it's ready to go. Sorry, not publish. I type in plot, and then I just go. It's ready to go. Right from the, you have to do it in model space, Earthworks. So plot, and it's the preview's ready to go. As long as it looks like this, then you're ready, right? So you do file, export. Where do you do it? Where's the command in Avjad? You export it as a PDF. Where do you export it as a PDF?
Hello, can you hear me?
That. Yeah, go ahead.
So basically, do you see where it says Civil 3D on top?
Yeah.
Yeah, this one. Export.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, export, and then it says PDF. That's what I do.
Yeah. As long as it looks the same, I'm
It
okay
does.
with it. So, yeah, then that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's so many ways to print. You know, like I use the file plot command. I type in plot. I use like there's so many ways of printing it. So as long as it looks like a PDF, if it looks like this preview, that's fine. There's more than one way to do everything. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah, they're just going to be work sessions. Today, I just wanted to field some final questions for the assignment. So if anybody has any minor issues, I've got a couple. I don't know if he's here. I was helping, was it Ray? Ray, are you still here? He's not here. Anyway, I was dealing with Ray earlier this morning. He had a problem with his solid 3D wasn't Ray, do you mind if I show your drawing to the class? Is that okay? Okay, so Ray has this issue. I haven't been able to solve it. Maybe you guys can help me. So this is his cut fill, but notice it's not solid. So if you look at mine, you see how it's colored in? Mine is colored in, and we're trying to figure out why his isn't. And there's a few settings in AutoCAD I've already explored. I don't know if any of you have seen this before or have experienced this or are smarter than I am, because I haven't been able to pick it up, figure it out. And Ray, I looked at it just before class again. Yeah, I looked at that. So I went to View and I went to Visual Styles, and it is 2D wireframe. If I change it to conceptual or realistic, the color comes in, but you can still see all the lines, the edges, and that's not the effect we're looking for. See the icon changed? And that's not the way to do it. That's kinda how to show it, but not really. So really it should be set to 2D, and I'll show you my drawing, right? My visual is set to 2D, and I see it even, it's set to 2D wireframe, but I still see the whole color. The only other thing I was thinking was in the options command, sometimes there's a setting here. And Ray, this is where you might want to explore, but sometimes in these settings, there's something here. Display, I thought I saw something before. Drafting, sometimes in here. Display, I thought I saw something before. Yeah, so you can see 2D display the Q. Display usage icon. visual style while creating 3D object by viewport. Yeah, I haven't really been able to find it. There's a switch. There's something there. I went to a blog too, and I couldn't find it there either. So in here, plotting, drafting, apply problem properties, display. Yeah, I haven't been able to figure out. Any ideas? Anybody seen it? I haven't been able to figure it out. So I'll Ray, I will keep looking after class and see what I can find, but so far I haven't had any luck, unfortunately. Yeah, I display all here. Okay, yeah, you can try Googling it and just go to Google and go to, there's a few Autodesk blogs, you might be able to find something, but I just haven't been able to see it. And it's probably one simple setting that might not even be in a dialog box. You might actually have to type something in here, like style or something stupid. Yeah, I'm trying, but I haven't been able to figure it out yet, right? So when I look at your style, it's good. You know, you've asked to look at the elevations, and it's in the plan view. The analysis elevations, this is all correct. You know, you asked for the 2D. Let me try 3D faces, if that colors in. No, that doesn't show it either. Yeah, so it's see, this is, and I'm not blaming you, Ray, but like you may have changed something that I didn't discuss or ask you to change, and now, you know, to find it is like a needle in a haystack, right? If you didn't do something I asked you to do, then we might be able to look at those. But if you did something I didn't ask you to do, it's going to be hard to find. So I'm not sure where it might have gone. I mean, the other thing I can think of is you don't want to start a new drawing. So I don't know if it could be a setting in your file, which it looks to be, right? Like mine works in my drawing, so yours doesn't. So there's a setting in your drawing, like in the drawing, that's kind of causing the problem. And yeah, and then like now to find it is going to be a bit of a headache. So we're going to look, I'm going to try, but I don't know if we'll be able to find it. 3D faces, 2D. So let's try a solid and hatch solid. Oh, for some reason, it doesn't want to fill them in. 2D solid. Yeah, it's just misbehaving. Even in 3D. On 3D, it looks good. Oh, it's because it's conceptual. So if I put this back to wireframe, conceptual, 3D hidden, no. So on 3D, it looks good. Okay, and let me try one more thing. Try one more thing. I'm going to create another surface. So I'm going to call create a surface 10. Start with your stripped. Go with your pre-grade. That's your calculation. Let me turn this one off. And then there's the surface. Change the style to cut fill. Same problem. And then solid is not what we're looking for. Yeah, I don't want to create a solid. 2D solid. No. Yeah, you stumped me, Ray. I'm not sure what it wants to. So like I said, I'll keep looking, but I haven't been able to figure that one out. Anybody else have any ideas? I haven't been able to figure it out. Locations is correct. Line type, scale, plot. That's all good. Yeah, I think it's an AutoCAD setting. In terms of the size, Sumitra? Okay. Did you check your scale at the bottom? Did you make sure this is 500? Okay. And then did you do a regen? And how big is it? Does it come up really big? Does it look right in model space? So, is it too big in model space? Okay, so maybe check your style. If you click on it and you go to table properties and you edit the style called standard, make sure that the text height is all 2. So are you using the standard one or did you create a new one? So under elevations, there's a style. Did you copy and edit or did you click and say new? New, okay, so use the standard one. When you create a new one, you're not going to get all the settings, right? So what I do is I make a copy of the standard one and then I modify a few things. If you say new, then the new one might not have the same default settings that are in the standard one, right? So if I say new, right, and I just say, let's call this a test. And then I apply to that one. The one called test, say okay, and then it's huge. Is that the problem? So don't create a new one, make a copy of the standard one.
He's not managerial that way, that's why.
All right, so what I did is I said, make a copy of the standard one. I changed the name, and then I just changed a couple of things in here under the display. Turned everything off and made it white. Okay, so that should solve it. Any other questions? Okay, so I had a couple of things I wanted to maybe demonstrate. They're not part of this course, but we could look at it. And one of the things that somebody asked me about was the slope arrows. So let me show you this. Let me get rid of this. Delete. And let me turn this off. So some people are asking me, how do you display the slope from here to here, the 2% slope? Okay. So the way to display the slope is to actually look at the finished ground surface. It's actually a little trick. I'm going to turn it on, TinView. So what you can do, and this is something I know you practiced in highways. If I click on the surface, I can go to add label, and I can go to slope. And then on the slope, there's an option, 1 point or 2 point. If you use 1 point, then wherever you click, it shows you the slope in the steepest direction on that triangle, right? So if I click on that, I put it in a different triangle, it's going to point downhill, the steepest direction on the triangle. Okay, so this is the 1 point. Okay, so that's the slope of the surface at that location. The triangle is a plane. Remember, it's a flat surface. Each triangle is a flat face. This is the steepest direction, and that's downhill. This is the steepest direction. This is the steepest direction. If you go into one of the backyard, the front yard is falling toward the front, 2% that way, and the backyard is falling the opposite way. So it's showing you the steepest direction on the face of the triangle. Right? There's 3%, 33%, that's 3 to 1. This is roughly 3%, this is 2%, this is 3%, and so on. So you can see the various slopes. The trick between 2 points is not to use this 1 point approach. So I'm going to get rid of that and click on the surface. Add label. I'm going to go to slope. And instead of 1 point, I'm going to use 2 point. And then I'm going to snap from here to here. And what that does is end at this location, right, where that grip is and where that grip is. It knows the elevation at both ends of the arrow. It knows the elevation. It knows the planned distance, right? So from the two elevations, one at each end of the arrow, it knows the rise, the difference in elevation. It knows the distance in the plan, the run, and it can calculate the slope. So wherever you put that arrow, right, it knows the elevation. So the trick is to put it exactly here, node, and put it exactly here, node. And it tells me it's 2% from this location to this location on the surface. And the reason, and then you don't need to show the surface anymore. Turn the surface off. So now I have a label that shows me the slope between this elevation and this elevation. But really, it's kind of a trick. It's the slope on the surface between those 2 points. But that slope is defined by these 2 points. These 2 points define the surface, and then I can label the surface, and it'll show the slope between those two locations on the surface. So that label is actually the surface label. But now it looks like I've labeled the slope between the 2 points, and that's the trick. Okay, and then you can change the style and so on, right? It always, when you move the two ends, right, it's going to just keep recalculating. Now, here's the default, new. The default is this, new. Node. Now you'll notice it's positive, right? So from here to here is uphill. And if I do it in the opposite direction, now you'll see it's negative, right? From here to here is negative, downhill. The arrow always points from the first point to the second point, okay? The way you want to use this is always the arrow should be pointing downhill in the direction of drainage, right? So it's falling from here to here. The next one, I'm going to make a copy of this. It should point the other way. So I want the arrow at this end, node. And I want this at this end, node. And now it's, from the high point down 2%, down 3%. So the arrow should always be pointing downhill. So you have to strategically choose which end of the arrow you put where, right? So I know this is downhill in this direction. And here. Oops, node. Okay, so you have to make sure it's pointing in the right direction. The first point to the second point is negative. If you flip it around, it'll be from the backyard toward the house, it'll be positive. But traditionally we show the arrows pointing downhill. Okay, so this is the default slope style for the surface between 2 points. Okay, so you have to manage how it behaves and customize it to behave a little better. So I'm not gonna ask you to do this, but you can customize it. I just want to make you aware. I actually have a style. So I'm going to make a copy of this one. I actually have a style. Right now it's off the surface, so it doesn't know what to do. Remember, my surface ends at the boundary. So that's why the question mark. So I put it back in range, then it has it has a value. If I change the style, I created one. I don't have it here. So I created one called percent, and I changed a few things about it. Okay, so let me see if I can recreate it. Right? It takes a little bit of time, and here's kind of a CAD management requirement. What I'd like to do is change for this style. So I'm going to go to surface settings. I'm going to go to labels for slope. So that's the standard one you're looking at. I'm going to make a copy of this, and I'm going to call it percent. Just give it a name. So now they're exactly the same. And in this percent thing, I'm going to change a little bit about it. I want to change the layout. I want the height. I want the height. I want the style to be L80. I want the surface slope to be 2 millimeters. I want the precision to be 2. That's fine. I'll leave it at 2. And I'm going to say the size of the arrow, I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. So if I go back to this, the direction arrow, I'm going to make it smaller too. I want the length. I want the length to be 7. I want it nice and short. The text, I'm going to make the text a little bit smaller. The text, I'm going to make it 1.5. And then I want the surface slope to 2 decimal places. I want this to be bottom center, yeah, and I want the offset to be, I'm not going to play with these just yet. I'll show you what I've got so far. So let me change the style now to percent, and it's a little cleaner, right? You can see it there. It's a little cleaner. I don't want to see the, now if the arrow is always pointing downhill, then the positive and negative sign is irrelevant. So I'm going to go back to the style. And I go back to the style, and I'm going to change the slope. I'm going to click on here, and I don't want the negative sign. So always positive, or drop the sign. And then I'm going to click this arrow to change that. So now it's going to be a positive number, and the arrow will point downhill, right? Now here's the funny thing again. If you put this here, node, and you put it over here, node, you know that now it's 3% down. Now, if you strategically choose it incorrectly, right? If you put this end of the arrow here and this end of the arrow here, it's 3%, but it's pointing uphill instead of downhill. So then there's some more sophisticated things you can do where you can actually tell it to point downhill no matter what. Okay, so this is how I achieve this. I go to the expressions, and in the expression I'm going to put this expression. So in here I'm going to say, I'm going to call it rotation, just ROT, and the expression is to create an if-then statement. So I'm going to start with a function called if the surface slope, so the surface slope comes from here, if the surface slope is less than 0, then use a rotation angle of 0. If not, then I want you to use a rotation angle of 180. And in the computer, when you type in a rotation angle, 180 it thinks is radians. You have to convert it to degrees. So convert degrees to radians. So it needs it in radians. So the conversion factor is degrees to radians, or the function, sorry, degrees to radians. And then it'll convert the 180 degrees to radians, and then we need a close bracket. So that's a logic statement. Say OK. Now watch what happens to this when I swap it out. I'm going to go to the style. I'm going to go to edit. And I'm going to tell it that the rotation angle, instead of being 0, I'm going to tell it to use that expression. Watch what happens to this arrow. So I'm going to say OK. And see how it flipped it the other way? So no matter what I do, right, if I put this, if I'm going to bring it down here, if I put this one at this end and put this one at this end, it's always going to point downhill. right? When I go to the front yard, watch, it's going to point 2% the other way. It's always pointing downhill because it knows if this elevation from here to here is negative, the rotation angle is to point in that direction. If the opposite is true, right? If this from here to here is positive, then it rotates the arrowhead to point in the other direction. So now I don't have to strategically choose which end I start with. Okay, and this is a very simple use of the function. Okay, and there's so many things you can do with styles. Like I said, I hope that you can kind of expand your mind into, wow, that's cool. Imagine all the customizations through the software you could perform just by seeing this one thing that I'm showing you. And then you can imagine what I've said before. There's a career just in CAD management, managing these systems for the standard styles your company needs to use when they're displaying their work. Okay, so there's a lot. I spent, like I said, I spent more than 6 months one time at one of my jobs helping to create all these styles for efficiency's sake. Okay, so these are customized. These are customizations based on the capabilities within the software. And then there are customizations with external third-party software where you actually design your own customizations. And I've been involved in some of that. But obviously, you can't do it through Civil 3D. So we used a whole bunch of other software that works with AutoCAD to do some of these custom routines. So you can see the possibilities are kind of based on what you can imagine, you know. And the thing, these ideas and these customizations are born from people doing AutoCAD and noticing, you know, mundane patterns that are repeated over and over and over again. So that's really where this is coming from, right? For efficiency's sake. Remember, you cannot learn to type faster, but if you type less, you can do a lot more work in the same hour. And that's what these customizations and little tips and tricks try and do. So that's how you create a slope arrow with a customization for the rotation. So you don't have to strategically choose. So now if you're putting in the label, you know, I can make a copy of this node. Whoops. Node. I can put one here, one here, one here, and one here, and then just put the other end where it belongs. Node. Take this one. Node. Take this one. Node. Take this one. Node. And now you have all your slopes. Oh, that one's hard to read. That's no problem. I don't think you can flip. Yeah, it won't let you flip this label. So all I do is for this one, I turn it around. Node, so it's on top instead of the bottom. And now you're starting to have a nice clean look. If you don't want to use percent grade for your steep slopes, the 3-to-1s, then you can create a copy and call it slope and change the slope from percent to run to rise, where the rise is always 1. Maybe 1 decimal place is all you need for that one. Say OK, say OK. And for this one on the steep slopes, you change the style. Oops, not edits, but you change the style from percent to slope. And now it's just something to 1 slope. So you know whenever you put in where your steep slopes are, you use that style instead of this one. And the beauty of it is, I think if you use the wrong one, so let's say you use this one, and you put it here. This is a 3-to-1 slope here. Oops. And there's another one here at the back of the lot. There's a 3-to-1 slope. Oh, I got the wrong style. You can use the AutoCAD match property command to say apply this this style to this. It changes the style. So you don't have to go through the change. You don't have to change the style through the dialog box. You can just apply match the style. Anyway, so again, another tip and trick. I didn't ask you to do that. I didn't ask you to show the slopes along the lot lines, but on a lot of drawings, you would have to show that. So there's a little tip and trick. Okay. If you're creating a portfolio, you might want to add that. If you have time over the break, you want to add that detail to the grading plan. This is a grading thing. Then I would take the time to do that. And it's mundane, it's tedious, but you know, you got to put. If it's a walkout, you might need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 labels on every lot line. It's a lot of work, right? But it conveys your design a lot better, and it's something that most municipalities require. They want to see the slope between the 2 points. Any other questions? I don't know if there's time. Like I said, I can. There's so much to learn, and you know, if you get like that, really is a drafting exercise. It's important for presentation, but I'm trying my best to focus more on the design tasks than the drafting tasks. Although the drafting is important. So if there's time, I may or may not ask for it. In past years, I have asked for it. In other years, I haven't. Last semester, I asked for it at the beginning, but then they cut the semester short. We lost a week when we closed down in March, and then they shortened the semester. So I actually took it out the requirement. Next semester, we're going back to the 14-week schedule. So there may be time to do it. I haven't decided yet. So if you want to practice, if you have time over the break, you can go ahead and try that. Again, it's a skill worth learning because it might be required at work, right? Not so much creating the style, but to, you know, put the labels into the drawing, which is pretty boring work to do, but it's got to be done. Option display performance. Okay, let's take a look at that. I'm going to open your drawing again. So under options, under display performance. Where is that, on the left or the right? Right side. Oh, okay, in here, and apply solid fill. So if I add that, and I say apply, and I say okay, regen. There you go. Solved it. Very good. And why that changed in your drawing, why this was off, I have no idea. There you go. There's the solution. Good work. Yeah, and like I said, sometimes and the funny thing about AutoCAD is it's got settings for everything. There's a setting for stuff you don't even know. And the reason you learn about the setting is if it changes from what you're used to seeing. And I've seen this in versions. Like every year there's a new version of AutoCAD. Sometimes they change the defaults, and all of a sudden it doesn't look or behave the way you want it to, and you have to figure out why. And that's when you learn about these settings. Okay, so I can't explain why that happened, but good thing you solved it. Okay, mystery solved. Very good. There's a huge distance between them. You looked at one, there's a huge distance vertically, you mean, or horizontally, Brian? Okay, so I think I know it. So do you have contours showing as triangles? I think I know how to solve that. If you go to the surface style, if you're displaying both your triangles and your contours, is that correct? And your contours and your surface are kind of, one part of it is way above the other? Is that what you're describing? Brian, is that the problem you're describing? I think I know what
It's
the
a little
problem
faster.
is. Yeah, go ahead. I can hear you. Yeah.
So what I did, I took the existing surface and the finished ground, and I displayed them both in Object Viewer. And
Yeah.
there's a
And,
vertical distance gap between the two of them.
like huge, right?
Huge, yeah. So
Yeah. So the reason for that.
No.
So this is why. If you go to the contour, if you go to the style for the existing ground, what you want to look at is the triangles. Make sure that it's not exaggerated, or if it is, it's the same exaggeration. So if this is exaggerated 5 times, then your finished ground style, in my case, I'm going to use this one, then your triangles have to have the same exaggeration. So when I look at these two surfaces together, let me just bring my other one back to life. FG. So if I use the style call, so there are 2 different styles, but they have a common setting. So let me show you. Object Viewer. So when I look at this, you see it's in range. It's kind of the same, vertically exaggerated 5 times, right? If I change the style for the existing ground, and in the style for the existing ground, I go to the triangles, and if these are not exaggerated, right, that means it's 1 time exaggerated, not 5 times, you'll get this effect. This is probably what you're talking about. Object Viewer. It's way above, like that, right? This kind of a distance.
Yeah.
So you can see the triangles are 1 times, but the contours are 5 times. And there's 2 settings you need to be aware of. So let me bring the contours down. So in the style for both surfaces, they have to match. So for triangles, whatever exaggeration you use here, you want to use the same for the contours under 3D geometry. So don't exaggerate these. Right? So this is not exaggerated for contours, and this is not exaggerated for triangles. So the style for the existing ground is consistent for triangles and style, right? So now there's no, the 3D triangles, which gives you the kind of the colored in green look, and the contours have the same vertical exaggeration. When you look at the surface for the proposed, whoops, look at this, Object Viewer. So now this is 5 times exaggerated for the triangles and the contours. So they're both times 5. But when you look at 2 surfaces together, if you've exaggerated one and not the other, then you'll see that effect. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing. Right. Yeah.
Right. So either you exaggerate, in my case, the existing ground to match the proposed, or you take the exaggeration off the proposed style so that it's down in the same elevation range. And when you exaggerate the surface, you're not changing the surface elevations. You're just changing how you view the surface. So if you scan the elevation for both, you'll see they're still in range. Like if I put my cursor here, that surface elevation for FG is not 3 times what it should be. It's exactly what it should be. But when you look at it, it multiplies it, the view by 5, not the actual value.
Okay. Okay.
Does that answer your question? Yeah, I figured that's what the problem was. So just make sure in each style for triangles and contours, you have the same vertical exaggeration. And then if you want to compare 2 surfaces, the settings for triangles and contours on both styles have to have the same vertical exaggeration. Okay?
Yep. Great. Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions? Oh, good. Good. Yeah, this is actually a lot better in person. Like when I have a work period, I just walk around from student to student in class, and we do troubleshooting, and it's so much faster. And I'm glad a few of you chose to use the audio. It's just so much faster to discuss it in person, or but to talk about it. By the time you describe a problem with screenshots and text, and by the time I send you either a screenshot or a video with text, the time is not well spent. It just takes a lot longer. So you can kind of ask me. Like what I like to do is send me an email that you're having a problem, and we'll set up a meeting, right? Unless we can do it in class like we're doing now. So, and again, if it's something you don't want to discuss in front of everybody, we can have a private meeting. But a lot of times, if you have a question and I solve it for you, it might actually answer someone else's question too. So But Ray, you got me good today with that one, with the display performance switch. That was new. I didn't even know that switch did that. So I learned something today too. Any other questions? Yeah, I should send them out tonight. I've marked most of them. I got one or two to do, and I'll send you an email with the results. So I hope to have that today, probably later this afternoon or tonight. That's it. Unless there's any other questions, well, that's pretty much it for today. That's all I wanted to talk about. Give everybody an opportunity to ask questions or make sure that their assignment's done. Again, don't wait till Friday. You know, if you have it done, just submit it and get it off your plate and deal with your other stuff. I know you probably have, you still have tests this week? I'm sure some of you have tests. Yeah, so you won't be cursing my name this week. This should be pretty quick to do assignment 6. Just get it done and move on to the more pressing tests and stuff. So, all right. Well, if there's no more questions, I'm going to sign off. I'll be available. So if you want to email me, if you do end up with some issues that pop up, just send me an email and we'll have a meeting. We do have a class tomorrow, so tomorrow will be more of the same. I don't expect. There's nothing left formally to teach in the course. Everything you need to know for this course has been covered. So if there's any troubleshooting required, I'll see you tomorrow as well. All right, so that's it for today. Good luck with the rest of your courses. You're welcome. And like I said, you can email me or I'll see you again tomorrow. No problem. Thank you, Claire. Thanks, everybody. Take care.